Welcome to another episode of the Left of Lansing podcast with Pat Johnston. A progressive insight into Michigan's political and cultural world. And of course, an entertaining podcast designed to shine a light on how to make Michigan's political machine work for the people. Now, from the Left of Lansing headquarters, located in his attic, here's the award-winning Pat Johnston.
Yeah! Welcome to another installment of Michigan's premier progressive podcast. I am Pat Johnston, and coming up here in just a few moments, Christiana Reynolds will join me. Christiana is running for the 108th House District, which is in the UP, and that's around the Delta County area and eastward. Now, she also got involved in a big way by helping oust those MAGA Delta County commissioners last spring as Delta County voters rejected the message that MAGA was selling there. Mrs. Reynolds will be coming up here in a few to talk about what got her into politics, why she's running for this House seat, and what she hopes to accomplish. And by the way, she is running against MAGA Republican Dave Preston. Christiana Reynolds comes up here in just a few moments. But I've got to spend the first few minutes here getting a few things off my chest. First of all, this episode is recorded and in the can by Wednesday night, so that means I won't have any reactions to Vice President Kamala Harris's or Minnesota Governor Tim Walz's speeches in front of the Democratic Convention in Chicago, but I will give my reactions to their speeches in the Friday short this week. I do want to say, though, I have to tell you this. I felt like an old Gen Xer at first when the convention started to do the roll call for the state delegates to nominate Kamala as the Democratic Party's nominee. I was always used to the old time, Mr. Speaker, or, Madam Speaker, Michigan, the Great Lakes State, home of the best coney dogs on the planet. Give our delegates to blah, 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 blah. I was always used to that. So I have to admit, I was a little taken aback when this year's convention used music for its roll call. In fact, it used different music for each state. But as they went through the states, I found myself getting into it, wondering, which song are they going to play for this state or for that state? But I really got into it, especially when Lil Jon appeared live for Georgia's turn, and I thought everyone in that hall was going to end up leaving and go clubbing. And by the way, Mika Brzezinski on MSNBC, he's not Little John, just want to let you know. But anyway, that was pretty cool. And it had me wondering, right after that performance, will Eminem make an appearance when it's Michigan's turn? Sadly, he did not appear, but it was cool when they still played Lose Yourself. But if I may make just a little constructive criticism, they should have played maybe a little melody like Eminem's Lose Yourself and the White Stripes' Seven Army Nation. I mean, that would have also had the place rocking and proving once again that Michigan is and always will be, according to Bob Seger, the home of rock and roll. Now, the Detroit News' Beth LeBlanc posted a video from her vantage point high above the convention floor when it was Michigan's turn in the roll call, and I really enjoyed this, and I want to share it with you. Now, the three delegates who did the speaking for Michigan were DNC Chair Lavora Barnes, Senator Debbie Stabenow, who's retiring this year as we hope to get Alyssa Slotkin into her seat, and, of course, Governor Gretchen Whitmer. Now, as you will hear or won't hear, Stabenow was standing way too far away from the microphone, so you could barely hear what she was saying. However, just listen to the reaction inside the arena when Whitmer grabs the mic and announces herself. It is pretty awesome. Listen.
40 years. We're getting done. And I'm Governor Gretchen Whitmer.
That was cool. Say what you want, but she's got the star power in the party. Oh, and she's speaking before Kamala gives her acceptance speech on Thursday night, so I will also have a reaction to Big Gretchen's speech as well in the Friday short. Unfortunately, now I have a little venting to do. Dear Leader Trump made a brief appearance in Howell, Michigan on Tuesday of this week. Michigan Advance's John King, who's lived in the area for many years, covered the political event. Wait, was it really a political event? Or was it a non-political event? I mean, it was called a press conference, which they said made it a non-political event. I mean, I'm confused, and so was everyone else. But what wasn't confusing was where Trump decided to hold this political, non-political event. It was deliberate, make no mistake. Dear Leader picked Howell for despicable reasons, and mostly because it's filled with his cult followers, but also because of its racist history. Howell's got a historic association with the KKK. And just last month, white supremacist dudes showed up there marching, chanting, "We love Hitler, we love Trump." And it was too bad because, Howell has tried to erase that white supremacist history for a long time, only to be visited now by a white supremacist. The event was held inside the Livingston County Sheriff's Office, and that means our good buddy Sheriff Mike Murphy's office. You remember Mike Murphy? He's the one who said that he wouldn't enforce any of the gun safety laws passed by Whitmer and the Democrats last year. Although, strange enough, he apparently is using the new red flag law from time to time. Interesting to note there, especially when he said, oh no, he's a constitutional sheriff. He won't be using any of those gun safety measures. Until he did. He was celebrated by the MAGA majority on the county board there, which then voted right after to declare that the county was a constitutional county, meaning that they would just ignore laws they didn't like. So this stalwart of a sheriff decided that it was an awesome idea to host Dear Leader in his office, and you know what, though? He might have violated the Michigan campaign finance law that bars the use of property owned by the taxpayers for campaign purposes. Good job by Livingston County Democratic Chair Judy Daubenmeier for posting that on the Livingston Post. Still, Sheriff Murphy used government resources, government offices, on government time to host his Dear Leader and hold his so-called non-political event. Now, when Biden visited Howell to tout the Build Back Better bill in 2021, oh, baby, the MAGA white supremacist crowd showed up with F. Joe Biden signs, because they're Christian people. A guy running around with a chainsaw without a chain, I guess, but still, that was meant to intimidate Biden supporters. Where were Sheriff Murphy's guys to keep everyone safe that day, if he's so about crime and law and order? He's also shown that protecting and serving only goes for some people, I guess, and not for all people. But even worse, Sheriff Murphy's cozying up to a guy who could care less about him, who could care less about police officers. During this non-political event, Florida Mike Rogers, who kissed Dear Leader's reign to get his endorsement for Debbie Stabenow's seat, spoke before Dear Leader and listened to his opening remarks directed towards Murphy and his fellow police officers. Just listen to Florida Mike Rogers.
Who's going to be standing with our county's heroes, the officers of Livingston County here and a little bit beyond. So thank you all. Sheriffs, thank you for being here. Thanks for what you do. This is one party that has your back, for sure. Yeah, you can be excited about that.
Wow. Florida Mike is Mr. Excitement, isn't he? And I just loved the Jeb Bush. Please clap. Please clap. Very nice. Oh, Florida Mike. His Dear Leader and his party is responsible for some 100 plus police officers being injured during the January 6th insurrection, an insurrection caused by Dear Leader. And Rogers says this is the party that's got the backs of police officers? Are you serious, Mike? Are you really serious? Florida Mike Rogers is embarrassing. He is weak. He is effete. He is a political hack. And I can't wait until we send him back to his Florida home once he loses badly to Alyssa Slotkin this November. Just go back to your Sunshine State home there, Florida Mike. Michigan is not your home anymore. And then Dear Leader slurred and stammered and bored those in attendance as he was ostensibly there to talk about crime, which, let's admit, he's got some experience in committing. Of course, everything to Dear Leader, everything to the MAGA cult is doom and gloom because to them, especially to him, everyday America sucks. It sucks. Why would he know anything about everyday Americans? He's never known anything about everyday America. For example, here's a little clip of him talking at the event about how we supposedly can't buy bread without getting shot or raped.
But you can't walk across the street to get a loaf of bread. You get shot, you get mugged, you get raped, you get whatever it may be. And you've seen it, and I've seen it.
As comedian and writer Frank Conniff tweeted, so E. Jean Carroll was on her way to buy bread? I wish I would have thought of that one, but hey, give it up to Frank Conniff. And guess what? It's funny because it's true. And by the way, these guys all care about law and order and crime and violent crime. Well, gun violence is crime. Yet, Dear Leader, Sheriff Mike Murphy as well, don't want to do anything about gun violence. Law and order, whatever. By the way, Trump also lied when he said under Biden-Harris that there was a 43% rise in violent crime. Well, here's a quote from John King from Michigan Advance as he wrote about that claim, and I quote, "Trump's assertions and the underlying reason for the visit are belied by a new report recently released by the Major Cities Chiefs Association, which found that violent crime, including homicide, rape, robbery, and aggravated assault, was down by 6% in the first 6 months of 2024 compared to the same time last year. In fact, homicides fell by 17%, according to the report. Stunning, just so stunning that Trump's wrong again and still will lie about it. And yet there was Sheriff Murphy right there yucking it up with his favorite criminal. Then at the conclusion, Trump answered one question. Remember, this was supposed to be a press conference, but it wasn't. However, though, one member of the press got to ask why Trump chose to visit Howell just after white supremacists marched there a month ago. And, well, here was his answer.
Who was here in 2021?
Joe Biden.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Oh, see, dear leader had a gotcha there. And I'm sorry, but I had this little feeling that was almost like a canned question. I don't know. No matter what, there was Sheriff Murphy yucking it up again with that criminal after that one. Whoo, man, are you funny? I love you so much being a criminal. Of course, dear leader could have spoken out against the white supremacists yelling how they love Hitler, they love Trump. A month ago, he could have said, hey, I denounce white supremacy, of course. I'm not for them. But he couldn't do that. You know why? Because I'm sure he'd say that some of them were some very fine people. The good thing is we are starting to see some demographic change in Livingston County, and in fact, Slocum won parts of Livingston County to win her congressional races, and Democratic State Representative Jennifer Conlon's district covers part of Livingston County. So despite MAGA forces trying to revert to the past, changes are happening there. I mean, it's almost like what Kamala Harris is saying, right? We're not going back. But let this be a reminder of what could happen if we let our guard down and forget to take the battle to them. Now, speaking of taking the battle to them, there's the good people of Delta County who refused to retreat after suffering some losses and setbacks after a MAGA majority took over the county's commission there a couple of years ago. And as you heard here last spring when I talked with Democrat Kelly Van Ginhoven, she and many others connected with each other, messaged with each other, knocked on all kinds of doors, got recall elections on the May ballot against 3 of those MAGA guys, including the chair, David Moyle, who defeated Kelly in 2022. And then Kelly and 2 other independent candidates not only soundly defeated those 3 guys, but they trounced them. They stomped on them. And now, sanity is slowly being restored in Delta County. In fact, David Moyle announced that he will not run against Kelly this fall, and he sort of complained a bit about this very podcast. David, brother, thank you so much for the free publicity. I'm happy to know that this podcast has the clout to end your political career. But David, all I did was help expose the extreme MAGA weirdness that you possess. And hey, don't blame me for the people there deciding that your desire for clownish chaos and weirdness is not what they wanted. Don't blame me. And Dana Van Effen, thanks so much for sharing all those Facebook posts from the MAGA cult up there who are upset with me. It was a good laugh. So you see, changes happened on the local level in Delta County, and that's thanks in part to Christiana Reynolds, who helped lead the charge to replace those MAGA commissioners. But Mrs. Reynolds is not done there. She's ready to help build the Blue Foundation that Kelly Van Ginhoven described, and she's going to try to build that Blue Foundation even outside of the Delta County borders. She's running for the 108th House District there, where she's hoping to oust MAGA Republican weirdo Dave Preston and help increase the Democratic majority's numbers in the state House. Christiana Reynolds is coming up here in just a moment. Hey, Rich, thanks for all of your hard work on leftoflansing.com. You're listening to LOL.
It's Michigan's premier progressive podcast, Left of Lansing with Pat Johnston. If Pat's brand of progressive pontifications is getting you all riled up and you'd like to give him a piece of your mind, or if you'd like to tell him he's doing an outstanding job and to keep up the great work, just email him. That's leftoflansing@gmail.com. Do you have stories you think Pat must know about or guest ideas for future episodes? That's leftoflansing@gmail.com. Want to share your thoughts on how to grow Michigan's population or which flavor of Faygo Pop is the best? It's rock and rye, by the way. Just email Pat, leftoflansing@gmail.com. Now, here's Pat.
Thank you, Jessica, for helping make the show sound awesome as always. But of course, the best Faygo pop flavor is not rock and rye, my friend. It's red pop. I mean, that's a slam dunk. But as you heard Jessica tell you, please subscribe to this podcast wherever you are listening and give it a 5-star review, and subscribe to Left of Lansing on YouTube as well. Subscriptions are important to us here in the podcast world, and we appreciate your assistance in helping us spread the progressive message throughout the state of Michigan and, of course, throughout the rest of the country as well. And speaking of spreading the message of common sense and progressive pro-worker, pro-family, and pro-democracy messages, Delta County has made some big news this year, and good news, as the forces of MAGA Republicanism have experienced a bit of a setback, as we've covered here this year. And I also talked about that in my monologue. Not only did common sense prevail in a big way when our good friend Kelly Van Ginhoven and a couple of others unseated the MAGA majority on the county board there, but as I said, the former chair has decided to sit out the general election race against Kelly as well. So that's good news. Now, Common Sense won on the local level, and Common Sense is looking to extend its victory around the same area as Christiana Reynolds is running to unseat MAGA Republican Dave Preston in Michigan's 108th House District. And I am ecstatic to have Christiana on this week's episode. Thanks for being with us, Christiana. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And I'm really excited to be sitting here and chatting with you.
All right, just real quick, since I brought it up at the very beginning, I said favorite flavor of Faygo Pop. Do you have one?
Favorite flavor? I gotta say it's strawberry.
Yeah. Oh, all right, okay. Very
yes,
well.
like the red pop. That's gotta be the number one flavor.
We're sort of on the same wavelength there, so that's okay. I'll accept that. As you just heard me say, I've covered Dave Preston a couple times on this show, and I've highlighted him last year when he got into a little argument with Democratic representative and also friend of the show, Lori Pohutsky from Livonia, over that clean energy and jobs bill that Democrats passed last year. And Preston, I think it was in some kind of subcommittee hearing, he tried to maintain that climate change isn't settled science or it's junk science, whatever. And Pohutsky responded that as a scientist, she could conclude that climate change definitely exists. And then he responded by saying, as a Yooper, I disagree.
While I appreciate that, I think it is also important to point out that those ice storms were a consequence of climate change. And if we continue to do nothing to combat it, things are going to get worse. And you are absolutely right. I agree with you. People will die. So thank you.
Consequence of climate change is theory,
and
not science fact.
If I may, Madam Chair.
As a scientist, I strongly disagree.
As a Yooper, I strongly disagree.
Okay. Yeah, when I read that, and then I saw it later because I couldn't believe it when I read it. And then when I saw it, it's like, okay, that's insane. I thought two things. One, that's just a weird thing to say because it didn't really make sense. And two, it's on par with MAGA Republicans. But two, I have a feeling that many Yoopers heard that and said, what is he talking about? So, Christiana, I know I'm from the LP and all that, but am I way off base with those thoughts?
No, you are not way off base. So if you could see me right now, I'm raising my hand, and I'm a Yooper as well, born and raised in the UP. And I had no idea where he was coming from with that comment. I guess the underlying argument that he was trying to make was that Yoopers are inherently more, in the know than scientists. I'm not entirely sure where he was going with that. But it was a very strange and weird response. And it clearly showed that he was kind of pushed up against a wall there, and he didn't know how to defend his position without revealing that it's really just his feelings. So
Right. And you know what? We'll talk more about him in a second, but that's great. I just loved your answer there, because Democratic Michigan Congresswoman Alyssa Slotkin, who's running against, as I call him, Florida Mike Rogers for Michigan's U.S. Senate seat, said in an interview that she believes that Democrats will keep the Senate majority in Washington because people just want team normal. I bring that up because when I talked with your good friend, Kelly Van Ginhoven, during her recall challenge for the Delta County Board, I said it sounded to me like she was running for those who just wanted to bring some common sense back to the area, which one could argue that she was also saying that they just wanted some normalcy back from the extreme MAGA wing in their local government. Is that one of the reasons why you decided to not only get involved in what was happening there with the county board, but then also decided to run in this election?
absolutely. So thank you for bringing up earlier, our recall efforts and everything. Like you said, I kind of started off my political journey with just volunteering with my local Democratic Party. I just kind of started out small. And when you're involved community member and you see things that are not going in the right direction, you get a little annoyed and upset and motivated. And motivated, I think, is the biggest thing. And you say, it is time to get involved and try to get this community back on its path. And not speaking really right now as a candidate, but just as like a community member. I think what frustrated me the most with the leadership that I saw, especially in my area, and I think other red areas would agree, especially if you're a progressive in a very red area, is that it feels like, and it is the case, that our MAGA leadership is not serious about governing. And there is this layer of weirdness to their policies. What they focus on are not things that actually improve our communities, right? They're like focused on targeting trans children, or they're focused on denying climate change and changing policies to make it easier to pollute. And like none of these are going to create good, sustainable communities. And we've had GOP leadership in the UP for decades. And this is the conversation I have with other Yoopers. I'm like, where has that gotten us? Our schools are closing. Our economy is stagnating. Our infrastructure is neglected. So to me, it just seems like common sense. We've had this kind of leadership, the same kind of leadership for years, and it has not worked out. We have to try something new. We have to get people into positions of leadership that have their priorities straight, okay? That are actually there to do the job and not just score political points on a national party level. And that's what I feel Dave Preston is doing right now.
Is it all about chaos, do you think, for MAGA Republicans?
For my impression, right? So I'm an outsider in this. I'm a left progressive in a very red area. So that's my perspective, right? I'm like looking in on this chaos and all this sort of nonsense that's going on in our local GOP. And for me, my impression is that it appears like a lot of local candidates are trying to score points with the national GOP party. I think a great example would be Dave Preston's proposed state rifle for the state of Michigan. Have you heard about that?
I have talked about that. I forgot that he was the one that proposed that. Go ahead, talk about that.
Yeah, he was a co-sponsor on that bill. So this would create a new rifle for the state of Michigan, kind of in the same vein as like how we have a state mammal and we have a state bird and we have a state flower. Well, this would create a state rifle for Michigan. And I got to be honest, right? Like born and raised Yooper, yeah. I'm not completely against the idea of having a state rifle, you know? Sure. I'm like, okay, we're a hunting state. There are other states around the country that do have state rifles. We wouldn't be the first state in the country to do something like that. But what got me and what really irritates me is that he proposed the AR-15 as the state rifle. And to me, that doesn't make any cultural sense whatsoever. I'm a gun owner. I was taught how to shoot as a child. You know, I've gone hunting. I learned how to shoot on a .22. So for me, if we're going to make this make sense, right? If we're going to make this make sense, then we should pick a rifle that actually is culturally significant within our state. Not the AR-15. There are no connections. For me, trying to understand the motivation behind something like that, to me, that just screams trying to earn political points with the gun lobbyists and the national GOP. So that's not serving our community. That's not time well spent. And as a constituent, that's my current representative. As a constituent, that's very upsetting to me.
Well, and that's the thing. You said you want to try to bring some common sense back.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying, too, about, yeah, that's fine. You want to have a state rifle. Fine. But it was obvious that what they were doing was two things. One, to troll people, and two, they just love getting liberal tears in their minds. And I just don't understand how that's a message that brings people together. I don't get it.
Right. It could have been a moment, right? The state mammal, the state bird. It's some of those identity building Michigander moments, right? And when people go out and they get tattoos of the state of Michigan, sometimes they'll incorporate those images and it's very personal. it's not just Dave. There are other Republicans involved in this bill. But, the fact that they are playing with our own identities and then pushing this kind of message, I find it very disturbing and strange. And like I said, it's a waste of time. It's not serious governing. It could have been a good moment. It could have been. But then it turns into this, again, stirring the pot, sort of just causing chaos and causing problems. We can't function like that. It's not sustainable. So it's very frustrating for me.
Christiana, you got involved in the Delta County Citizens for Ethical Leadership Facebook group. In fact, I think you were the co-founder, correct?
I sure was. Yes.
Okay. All right. You were getting other people involved. And that, of course, happened after, the MAGA Republicans got control of the county commission. Was that the first time that you really got involved in anything political, or has the political fight always sort of been in your blood as far as you can remember?
The political fight has always been in my blood, even in terms of like my family. My grandmother, she was a wonderful advocate for Latino rights, and she was always involved. And I kind of learned from her how to use your passion and use your ability to advocate for others. And so I'm always like very thankful for her. So as an adult, I kind of have always immediately gotten involved in different things. I kind of describe myself as like a chronic hand raiser. Like whenever something needs to get done, it's okay, Christiana, like I'm going to raise my hand. Like I'll do it. I'll go out, I'll knock doors, I'll make phone calls, I'll design the website or create stuff. Or in terms of the Delta County Citizens for Ethical Leadership, I'll start the Facebook page and really like push that digital outreach portion while other people are working on other parts of this grassroots movement. And we've found great success overall. And I've always been one of those people that gets really excited when I'm around others that have the same values that I do. I say it like fills up my cup. So I love doing stuff like this. It helps my community. And on a personal level, I just find great joy in doing it.
I'm just going to go out on a limb here and say that it doesn't seem like that you give up real easy after a setback. Because, for instance, after Kelly lost her race against David Moyle, you guys dusted yourselves off and got right back to work. And, of course, she defeated Moyle, and those other two commissioners lost as well. And I think there's a lesson there, because if you're going to fight in a red area in the state, I guess you would have to expect maybe a setback. But you guys are proving, even if you have those setbacks, never give up the fight.
And you know what? I might have to disagree with you here just a little bit, because I would not even view them as a setback. And this is what I've been telling people in my area. Sometimes change happens and it's monumental, right? Like the May 7th election where we flipped those 3 seats and it all happened very quickly all at once. And it was like big and amazing. And I'm still on an emotional high from it. But like sometimes change is incremental and it's these baby steps forward, right? It's this movement in the correct direction. And so when Kelly lost her election, we kind of looked at it and we said, what can we do better? What was the roadblock that got in our way? Did we communicate as much as we could have? And we took what we learned and we changed our strategies. Responding to the needs of the community is so important. And advocacy and grassroots politics in the UP looks different than it looks in other larger, more urban areas. It's a challenge to get messaging out in rural areas because people are so spread apart. And you really have to think kind of creatively because there are progressives in the UP, a lot more of them than people think. And it's just finding our people and getting them fired up and motivated and out to the polls. But we were able to do it. And so I fully believe that we can continue this momentum. I don't know what's going to happen in November, but I know that we are moving in the right direction and that we will make gains in November. I don't know how much we'll gain, but I feel very optimistic.
I'm feeling the same way, too. So let's talk more about you, your district and everything. The 108 that includes not only Delta County, but some others, right?
Yes. So it is a very big district. It kind of stretches from Menominee and it kind of hugs the north coast of Lake Michigan, and it extends almost all the way into Sault Ste. Marie. So it is quite a large geographic area.
And you've mentioned that you're a native Yooper. Have you lived up there your whole life?
So I was born and raised in Escanaba, but during the Great Recession, my father lost his job. And so we had to move downstate while I was like in middle school and high school. I went to college downstate. And later on, after I was married and me and my husband, we were starting our family, we were talking about where we wanted to raise our kids. I know my parents wanted to retire back in Escanaba, and the cost of living is really great up here, especially when you compare it to other areas around the country. And so we chatted, we talked about it, and I really wanted to come back. So we actually did a little family trip up to Escanaba so that my husband could see the town. And he loved it. It was like that weekend that we bought our house. Like we immediately just pulled the trigger and we went for it. We got a great little house in town and we love it. And we're very, very happy to be back in the UP raising our kids.
Awesome. What is it about your district that made you throw your name in there and get in the fight, and why you want to represent it?
Well, like I said, I feel like our current leadership just does not have their priorities straight. I think their focus is not on community building. I think it's somewhere, I don't know where it is, but it's somewhere else. For me, my motivation is creating a sustainable community for my children. I want my kids to have opportunity here in this area. A lot of Yoopers, I've talked with people all over my district and outside my district. The UP is a pretty small community. We're always chatting with each other. The story that I hear all the time is, especially older people in the community, they say, my kids grew up here and then they had to leave, right, to get the job or to pursue their interest or whatever, because there is a lack of opportunity in the UP. And for me, that's frustrating. We need to create more opportunity here for our young people. That was, I think, my biggest motivator, was that I think the UP is not real, and especially the 108, it's not realizing its full potential. And we need leadership to move us in that direction.
Keeping people in the area, of course, that is something that's being discussed throughout the entire state, as our state has lost its population here over the last 20 to 30 years. What are some policies that maybe you would really like to focus on if you get into Lansing to help not just the people stay in your district and stay in the UP, but stay here in Michigan? What are some of those major policy issues for you?
That's a great question. So we really need to create communities where families can thrive. I think that's really the heart of it, right? If we want people to stay or even move to the state, right? If we want to attract people to Michigan, we need to create communities that are family focused and family friendly. So that means investing in our parks. It means investing in education. It means creating opportunities for people to open up small business and then supporting them in that endeavor. I have friends in my community who have opened up small businesses and they've expressed to me the frustration of navigating that. So there are things that we can do at the local and the state level to make it a better place. But we'll never get there if the only leadership that we have are these people who are focused on scoring political points for the GOP.
I saw on your campaign site that you would like to make your area of Michigan up there in the UP, you would like to make it a remote work hub. And I found that, I have to tell you, extremely an intriguing idea. Can you talk more about it and how that would help workers and people in your area?
I would love to talk about that. So before I was teaching in person, obviously like during the pandemic, a lot of teachers went online and I'm an educator. As I worked online, my husband also got a job online and it gave us the freedom to actually move back to the UP. We were both remote workers in the UP for the first year and a half that we were here. And I realized that this area, again, not realizing its full potential, we call the UP God's country because it's so beautiful. It's gorgeous. I love living up here.
It is. It is gorgeous. It is. Absolutely.
Right? I kind of take inspiration from other parts of Michigan that are doing well with this messaging. And I got to give props to Traverse City. Okay. Traverse City has done a wonderful job marketing themselves to the rest of the state and even to the rest of the country and saying you can kind of have your cake and eat it too, right? You can keep your high paying job, your online work, and you can move up north and enjoy the beauty and the recreation that we offer in our area. And I feel like the UP can take some tips from their outreach. And I think that it also opens up opportunities opportunities for people who are currently living here. It's not just about attracting more people to the area, as I do think that would be a good thing overall for our communities. It's also good for people who are already living in the UP. One of the struggles that we have in the area is that sometimes you have to wait for someone to either die or retire to go up the next step at wherever you're working. It sounds like a little morbid, but if there are Yoopers listening, like they would totally understand that feeling. You're waiting for so-and-so to like retire so that you can move up. Well, if we have reliable broadband access across the rural portions of Michigan, well, that opens up opportunities for people who are already here. Maybe people will be able to take that next step in their career if they can find that job online. So it's not just about, like I said, attracting people to the state. It's also about another opportunity for people already in the area. The thing is, though, they need to have that access, that broadband access in their area. That kind of infrastructure can definitely be supported at the state level. And I find that very critical.
You mentioned that you're an educator. What do you teach?
I'm a high school social studies teacher in a small school here in the UP. So I actually teach 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade. I teach all of the high school courses.
I assume your experience here being an educator is one of the other main reasons that you've decided to run. Is there something that you would like to push policy-wise that would help schools in your area? And especially, we could talk rural schools as well.
And you are correct. As an educator, I've worked in public schools, charter schools. I've worked in person. I've worked online. So I'm really familiar with all different aspects of our educational system here in the state of Michigan. And I think that gives me a very unique sort of experience. It's not like a sexy policy that I think would get like a lot of people excited. But if you are in education, this would make an entire world of difference. And that is creating a statewide curriculum depository. So like something that teachers can access across the state and share ideas and share curriculum. When we are looking at rural schools, there are so many needs that rural schools have. And one of the issues is that we have teachers in small schools that have a lot of different subjects that they are teaching throughout the day, right? I just mentioned that at my small school, I'm teaching 5 different classes. So in terms of a workload, I'm trying to explain it to people outside of education. It takes you at least an hour or so to prepare every single day for each one of those classes. So if you think about your 5 different classes that you might have to teach, that means there has to be 5 hours of preparation for each one of those courses, okay, every single day. And that does not include grading. That does not even include your teaching time. So that's 5 hours on top of your full day at school, not including grading. So you can see exactly why teachers are burning out at such a fast rate. It's not that they don't care about their students or their schools. It's just they can't keep up with the workload. So if I'm able to share the things that I have developed and I can give that to a first-year teacher, they might actually stay in the teaching field. Right now, we have a teacher shortage crisis in our state. It's actually happening all over the country, but it is happening within our state. And we really need to find concrete solutions to address the needs of our teaching staff. Giving them actual support means giving them things that they can use that day in their classroom. Professional development is great. It keeps our skills up to par and it keeps us in the know, but we need things that go beyond just more professional development opportunities. And so I think addressing that workload issue could really, really help retain teachers and perhaps even encourage young people to go into teaching. We don't have a lot of young people signing up for teaching courses. If we look at the data across our universities, students are choosing other fields to go into. If we can say, when you go into teaching, you will be supported with your curriculum development, okay? Like you're not just on your own, or we can support you in this way. We can not just retain teachers, but maybe even attract more people to the field. So that's where my brain is. We really need to address this before it becomes an absolute, all hands on deck crisis emergency.
Christiana, that is such a common sense and serious solution to a problem, especially in the field of education here in our state. I get this feeling, and maybe I'm wrong, but I just have this strange feeling that Dave Preston isn't proposing a similar kind of serious proposals out there when it comes to education and many other areas of concern for your district. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about that.
No, in fact, so when you look at his voting record, all of his educational sort of proposals are based around guns. One of his educational proposals is the guardianship program. It's a program to address an active shooter situation in which the teacher, who is a volunteer, by the way, that's actually laid out in the proposal, the teacher would conceal carry and then be the first person to engage with that active shooter threat on campus. As a teacher, if I wanted to be the person engaging in an active shooter, I would have been a cop. I would have picked a different career. So it's tone deaf bills like that that push more people away from teaching. This is going to make the teacher shortage even worse. We need educators in positions of leadership if we want to have actual solutions. That's another reason why I threw my hat in the ring, because we're not going to have any solutions unless someone who actually knows the issues are in that position to adequately represent the field.
All right. Well, people would like to learn more about your campaign and contribute or volunteer. How's the best way to do so?
The best way to do so is to go to my website. It's Reynolds, REYNOLDS, 4 rep, REP.com. On my website, you can find links to all my socials. You can donate directly to my Act Blue account. And you can also learn a little bit more about my platform, about myself. We kind of covered my professional, career, but I have other passions as well, like housing and economic development. So I would encourage people to go to my website, check it out, get connected. We go online on Facebook every Monday with different guests, and we talk about the issues that are really, really important in our area. Just on Monday, I was able to get a guest on, we call it tea time. We sit down at my dining room table, we have tea and we talk issues. So I was sitting down with Odin Phoenix, a anti-racist educator and influencer, and we talked about Indigenous issues. And to be honest, it was one of the first times I was able to speak about Project 2025 from an Indigenous perspective. And it was incredible. We really dove into it about if Project 2025 is implemented, how that would impact the Indigenous communities like around the country. So we do that every Monday. And I would just encourage people to get connected, get involved, and get fired up. And of course, get their friends and family out to the polls in November to vote.
Outstanding job. Christiana Reynolds, Democrat running for Michigan House District 108 and trying to unseat David Preston as Democrats try to increase the majority in the State House this year, which means getting a better shot at passing more common sense progressive legislation like many of the ideas that Christiana shared with us here today to not only make her district a better place, but the entire state of Michigan a better place for the common good, as I always say. Christiana, thanks so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule to be on here this week. Good luck, and thanks for bringing back some sanity to our politics, and I'd love to have you back on soon.
I really appreciate you too. Thank you so much. And if you ever want to chat again, I am available.
It's progressivism with passion. It's the Left of Lansing podcast, where Pat shines a light on Michigan's progressive movement. Contact Pat at leftoflansing@gmail.com.
You know, I love covering the politics and especially the progressive politics happening in the Upper Peninsula. They're helping build a blue foundation in Delta County, and with Christiana Reynolds, they can build a blue foundation across the entire UP again, with Democrat Jen Hill already holding the seat in the 109th district, which we have to make sure she gets reelected, and Jody Decker running for the 107th district on the east side of the UP. Things could get really interesting if both Decker and Reynolds can win those seats. Remember, that was Bart Stupak country, and as we've seen with the voter enthusiasm to dissolve the MAGA leadership on the local level in Delta County, we can see that energy really spread across the entire UP. key because, as you heard from Christiana this week, she wants to bring serious solutions to improve the lives of the people in her area. She believes that government is there to help people. Meanwhile, Dave Preston has nothing of value to offer to the fine people of the 108th except MAGA chaos and cruelty. That's not governing, and it's not even being an adult. Like so many other MAGA Michigan extremist Republicans, all they've got is grievance, complaint, and what drives them the most, owning the libs. That's it. That's what drives them. Well, we deserve better across the state, and we can get that with Christiana Reynolds. I'll leave links to Christiana's campaign site, her Facebook page, at leftoflansing.com, and wherever you get your podcast. Help her out if you can. Time now for the Left of Lansing Last Call. Well, listen to this. Actually, I caught this last week, and I was holding on to it. Michael Krantz from MLive posted a story titled, "All Kids Deserve Nutrition. Michigan Private Schools Fight for Free Meals." Woo! Oh, man, you don't say. Private schools are now asking, hey, why can't we get the piece of the free school meal pie? Because private schools were ostensibly non-taxpayer-funded schools until recently. I mean, the whole school choice racket is being exposed as the money-making scheme for many MAGA Republicans who just want to destroy the public school system. It took a while, but I think the public is starting to catch on. And what I love the most, though, is how just 1 year ago, MAGA Michigan influencers were denouncing the free meal at public schools law. For instance, you had the Mackinac Center for Public Policy, so-called, which is a Betsy DeVos family think tank, which is also a contradiction in terms, denounced this program when Democrats passed it and Gretchen Whitmer signed it into law in 2023. The Mac Center's James David Dixon lamented last year how it's a false narrative. There's no such thing as a free lunch. James David Dixon went so far to say that at the time, no families had been impacted by the program. Of course not, because it was signed into law last summer. But what irked James David Dixon the most is, as he says, the lunches aren't free and are being paid by the taxpayer. You know, it was a strange argument to make because I think everyone knew taxpayers were responsible since it was part of the education budget last year. And that's why it was popular with voters. And it passed once again this year, thanks to Whitmer and her Democratic majority in Lansing. And guess why? Because lawmakers were hearing how much parents were enjoying not having to worry about packing lunches or providing cash for their children each and every day. And there's no longer lunch shaming, as every kid, no matter their economic status, are eligible. Not only that, but studies show it helps with kids' scholastic abilities, which is why, all of a sudden, private schools are shouting, "No fair!" You see, Republicans who work for the failed Betsy DeVos voucher scam voted against free public school meals because they knew it would be a hit with the parents and with their kids. That means public schools would benefit anytime public schools gain an advantage and actually help kids. That makes the failed school choice voucher club very, very nervous. So now, after saying it wouldn't work and taxpayers should demand that kids starve at school, or whatever they were trying to argue, are now saying they're for pro-universal free lunch. Oh, all right. They sound like government spending and investments in our kids' education is a good thing. I'll be darned. I mean, next thing they'll demand is being held to the same oversight standards of public schools. You know, I'll tell you what. School choice scammers, listen up. You want my tax dollars to pay for your students' free meals? Fine. But that means you have to adhere to the same oversight standards every public school that gets my money has to follow. Until then, hey, teach the kids they have to pull themselves up by their bootstraps and do it on their own, which is what I thought the whole point of this school choice exercise was all about.
You're listening to the Left of Lansing podcast. The music you're hearing is by Wander Beats. To hear the latest project, check out Space Leopard on your favorite streaming site. Now back to our favorite progressive voice in Michigan. It's Pat Johnston.
Well, that's going to do it for this edition of The Left of Lansing. You can always contact me at leftoflansing@gmail.com and let me know what you thought of the show, where I was right, where I was wrong, and hey, whatever else you want. Special thanks to Christiana Reynolds for being my guest this week. And before I forget, I just wanted to give a Left of Lansing high five to Michigan Democratic State Senator Mallory McMorrow for giving an outstanding presentation on Project 2025 at the Democratic Convention. I'll tell you what, we've got a deep bench of terrific talent here within the Michigan Democratic Party, and I'm glad that Senator McMorrow got some screen time, much deserved, for all of her hard work on stressing the need to pay attention and to fund state house and Senate races, because that is where change happens the fastest. And that's what I'm trying to highlight right here on this podcast. Next week is the week before Labor Day. Is that right? And is this right? Michigan and Michigan State kick off the season next weekend, and my CMU Chips kick off next Thursday night? Wow, where did the summer go? But you know what? That means we've only got a little more than 2 months until Election Day. Until next time, remember, take the battle to them. Thank you, Michigan.
The Left of Lansing podcast was produced by Pat Johnston, written by Pat Johnston, researched by Pat Johnston, edited by Pat Johnston, and hosted by, yes, Pat Johnston. Technical assistance by Dr. Heather. And thanks to our good friend Kirsten for the awesome podcast logo. Remember to visit leftoflansing.com for more news and information. Thanks again for listening to the Left of Lansing podcast.